So, greetings, Alafia. My name is Gloria, and I'm an ancestral healing coach. You know, a lot of times I've been asked, how did I start my journey into the world of ancestral healing? And it's an interesting one because maybe about 5 years ago, maybe even 2 years ago, if you had asked me, would I be where I am now? I probably would have laughed and said, there's no way. I grew up in a Christian family, Christian background, no dogma, but we went to church. Our parents taught us right from wrong. And so that was my orientation. Um, and as I grew up, I didn't sort of focus on institutional religion. I would go to church sometimes, but I had a strong faith. I believed in God. I believed in a higher being. And that's how I lived my life. How we were taught, which was about being kind to others, trying to do the best we could, trying to live a righteous life. And that's different from being self-righteous. It's just trying to do the best you can every day. And so all my career, my professions, was about helping people. And so I've sort of started the journey of listening to people through the different pieces of work that I would do as a journalist, and trained to be a therapist and a counselor and then a coach. So all these professions gave me more and more insight into the human condition, as they say. And then as it happened, I had some health issues. But prior to that, I'd had a lot of loss in my family. I come from a big family, but there were many, many deaths, many losses. At some point, I couldn't really grieve anymore because there were just too many. And to be honest, I was expecting my death to come at any moment, but it didn't. And I wondered about that, but I kept going. And at some point, I had some health issues, and while I was recovering after a number of operations, I would say I got what they'd call a calling. I had my road to Damascus experience where I felt I was being told that at this point in my life, I needed to go into the seminary. I kept very quiet about it because I thought seminary, so that means training to be a minister. I didn't quite know where that would lead me, to be honest, but I responded and I did the training, and I became an ordained minister about 6 years ago. And at that point, I thought to myself, now, what exactly does this mean? Am I going to be preaching in a church? But somehow I knew that wasn't going to happen. But then I also knew that throughout my life, all my pieces of work, that was my ministry. And I always tell people, ministry is not always about being in the church. Two people comforting each other, trying to uphold each other's well-being, that's ministry. Anything that where two people come together or more, where they're trying to raise each other's well-being, their state of health, emotional, psychological, all those things are ministry. So I didn't really think I necessarily had to go to church. But I was very still, very quiet within myself, trying to understand what it meant, because I knew there was a meaning to it. I just didn't know what it was then. And then just by chance, I happened to see some information about ancestral healing, and I thought, what is that? Based on my own cultural and religious upbringing, I thought, anything sounding ancestral, maybe that's something to stay away from. But I had a pull. I was curious. I've always had a curious mind. And I read a bit more about it, and it whet my appetite to find out a bit more, simply because the things that I was reading about it wasn't many of the myths and untruths that I'd grown up hearing and believing about what any kind of ancestral work was. That's not to say those things don't exist, but this particular thing that I was reading about was something different. And so I decided to have a look and see what it's all about. Well, to cut a long story short, I went into the training, and the more I trained, the more I thought, oh, and I learned more about the Yoruba religion, which, for me made every sense in the world. There was more accountability. You're not expecting somebody else to speak on your behalf. You have more accountability for how you present in the world. And something about it just switched a light in me. And I thought, I get this, I understand it. And I think this is the way I want to go. This is what I want to do. And that's how I stepped into the work of ancestral healing. And it's been a gift that's just kept giving. And the greatest gift I've got from becoming an ancestral healer is helping other people on their own journey and seeing the impact of that work, because so many of us are lost at the moment. It's not rocket science. People are looking for answers. They're looking for ways to connect. They're looking for ways to make meaning of a lot of the chaos in their lives. And unfortunately, there are a lot of people who are taking advantage of that. And so if this interests you, if you're curious, like I was curious, why don't you have a look at what I'm all about? Check out my website, and I look forward to seeing you.